Ladies, let me tell you something right now. There is power in your mystery. There is strength in your silence. And there is protection in your wisdom. See, too many times we think that being vulnerable means handing over all the keys to our soul, hoping that if we just lay bare every piece of ourselves, someone will finally see us, value us, keep us. But sis, that's not vulnerability. That's surrendering your discernment. Today we're talking about the 7 things a woman should never reveal to a man. Not because we're playing games, not because we're building walls, but because we're protecting the divine strategy God has placed inside of us. Because sometimes silence is sacred and boundaries are biblical. So let's get into it, because your destiny depends on it. Never reveal the full extent of your insecurities. There's a difference between being real and being reckless with your truth. Sometimes we are so desperate to feel known, so hungry to be understood, that we let people into rooms of our hearts that they haven't earned the right to walk through. And when it comes to your insecurities, sis, you better know, not everybody can handle your fragility with care. See, when a woman lays out all her self-doubt in front of someone who hasn't proven their character, she risks giving them the tools to destroy her from the inside out. You have to understand that your insecurities are sacred. They are the parts of you that are still healing, still forming, still learning how to believe in yourself again. And if you hand those pieces over too quickly, they may end up used against you in ways you didn't see coming. It might not happen on day 1 or day 20. But when the heat of conflict rises, when egos clash, when the romance isn't sweet and the conversations turn sharp, that same man may take your confessions and throw them like daggers, reminding you of the very things you trusted him to understand. We've seen it, haven't we? A woman shares that she doesn't feel beautiful without makeup, and next thing you know, she's being ridiculed the moment she tries to speak up. She says she's afraid of being abandoned, and suddenly silence becomes a weapon. She says she's always battled with not feeling good enough, and now every disagreement becomes a reminder that she probably isn't. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a time for sharing, for being open, for letting someone in to see the real you. But that time has to be earned, and it can't be rushed by butterflies or infatuation. Vulnerability is a language for safe spaces, and you have to know if a man speaks the language of compassion before you start writing him chapters of your inner dialogue. Too many women equate exposure with intimacy. But real intimacy isn't just about what you reveal. It's about who's willing to protect what you reveal. It's about discernment. It's about watching how he handles other people's weaknesses before you offer him yours. Does he laugh at brokenness when it's not his own? Does he shame what he doesn't understand? Is he the type to see you cry and lean in? Or does he back away because he doesn't know how to hold space? And sometimes, let's be real, you don't even know the full extent of your own insecurities yet. Some of them are still unraveling, still speaking lies to your soul in quiet moments. You don't need someone interpreting them while they're still unfolding. That's not their job. That's God's job. That's your therapist's job. Because when you are still learning how to love the parts of yourself that feel unworthy, handing them over to someone too soon is like letting a stranger edit your unfinished manuscript. They don't know the story. They don't know the voice, and they sure don't know the ending. So why would you give them the pen? Insecurity doesn't make you less of a woman. It makes you human. But what makes you wise is understanding that being human doesn't mean being unguarded. You can be soft and strong at the same time. You can be vulnerable without being exposed. And you can love yourself enough to say, you don't get to see this part of me, not yet. Never reveal how many times you've been hurt and went back. There's something sacred about the stories we carry. The heartbreaks, the betrayals, the times we gave someone access to us that they never should have had. And as women, we often feel the need to explain those stories like a resume, hoping that maybe, just maybe, if we lay it all on the table, someone will understand why we love the way we love, why we guard the way we guard. But sis, let me pause you right there. There's a difference between being transparent and being too tender with the wrong audience. Because when you tell a man how many times you've been hurt and went back, you're not just sharing your past, you're revealing a pattern that someone with the wrong heart could exploit, a pattern that tells him you normalize pain, that you tolerate inconsistency, that you'll stay even when the love stops showing up in the room. You may think you're just being honest, but what you're really doing is teaching him how far he can push you before you break. See, when you reveal that you've gone back to someone who lied to you, cheated on you, neglected you, disrespected you, you're not just recounting history, you're exposing your threshold for mistreatment. And not every man is mature enough to hear that and choose to love you better. Some will hear it and start calculating, how many mistakes do I get before she walks away? How much grace can I misuse before she cuts ties? And I get it. You want to be understood. You want someone to know you didn't just become guarded for no reason. But that kind of understanding comes through observation, not oversharing. If a man watches your strength, your growth, your boundaries, he'll see that you're not the woman you used to be. You don't have to give him the blueprint of your brokenness to prove you've been rebuilt. Your posture, your pace, your peace will speak louder than any confessional. The enemy would love for you to believe that your history makes you weak. But what really makes you vulnerable is telling someone all the times you stayed when you should have left before they've shown any proof that they plan to stay and protect your heart. You may think you're showing humility, but what you're really doing is offering a roadmap to your pain points. And that's not a gift you give lightly. Let's be real too. Sometimes the reason we overshare those stories is because we haven't fully forgiven ourselves. So we wear the pain like a warning label. I've been through it. I've tolerated too much. I lost myself. And while that may be your truth, it doesn't have to be your introduction. You are not the sum total of the times you went back. You are the woman who finally didn't. The woman who chose to heal, who chose to grow, who chose to redefine what love should feel like. So no, you don't need to hide your truth, but you also don't need to hand it out like a brochure. Let him earn the layers. Let him show up consistently. Let him build trust over time. Because when you tell him too early how many times you've been broken and returned to the fire, he might start thinking you're fireproof, that you can handle pain like it's part of the package. And that's not love. That's exploitation dressed up as companionship. There's power in selective storytelling, in sharing what's necessary but not what's sacred. Because some parts of your past don't need to be revealed to be redeemed. God already knows. You already overcame. And if a man is meant to walk beside you, he'll see that in the way you carry yourself. Not in the scars you feel pressured to show. Ever reveal how much power he holds over your emotions. Sis, let's be real. When you love hard. When you care with your whole being. And that kind of love, it's rare. It's beautiful. It's powerful. But it's also dangerous when it's not protected. One of the most critical things a woman must learn is how to manage her emotional transparency, especially in the early stages of a relationship. Because the moment you reveal just how deeply his presence or his absence affects your emotions, you hand him a kind of control that can either build you up or break you down. Now, I'm not talking about suppressing your feelings or pretending to be cold. You don't have to harden your heart to protect it, but there is a difference between sharing your emotions and surrendering your power. When you tell a man that his words, his silence, his actions, or even his neglect have the ability to ruin your day, shift your mood, or cause you to spiral, what you're saying is, you hold the remote to my peace, and no one should hold that but God. When you're still building something with someone, you're laying bricks of trust, of respect, of safety. But if you start revealing that he can shake your entire emotional state without earning that kind of access, you disrupt the balance. You teach him that your stability is contingent on his approval, his attention, his affection. And even a good man might start responding to that power in unhealthy ways. Not because he's cruel, but because power, when unearned, distorts intimacy. We've all seen it, maybe even lived it. You open your heart thinking vulnerability will bring you closer. And instead, he starts pulling back. Not because he doesn't care, but because suddenly he feels responsible for managing your emotions when the relationship isn't even rooted yet. Or worse, he begins to manipulate your feelings, knowing he can spark a reaction just by pulling away, going silent, or being inconsistent. And sis, that's not love, that's emotional instability masquerading as connection. You don't have to announce every emotional wave. You don't have to explain every tear. Every moment of anxiety, every burst of joy that rises when he texts you first thing in the morning. There's power in holding some of that for yourself. Let him see your joy, but not that his presence is the only source of it. Let him see your affection, but not that his absence could collapse your confidence. When you reveal how deeply your emotional equilibrium is tied to a man, you risk losing the foundation of self-worth that should anchor every relationship you enter. Love should amplify you, not define you. A man should complement your happiness, not become the only reason it exists. And let me say this to the woman who's been told that being too emotional is her flaw. It's not. Your sensitivity is not weakness, it's divine design, but you must steward it with wisdom. You must learn when to share your heart and when to guard it. Every tear isn't meant to be explained. Every mood shift doesn't need a press conference. Some things you carry to God before you carry them to him. Because a man who is truly worthy of your heart will pay attention without needing you to fall apart in front of him. He'll see your silence, your pause, your shift, and he'll care enough to ask. But before he ever gets that privilege, you need to be so grounded in your own peace that his love is an addition, not a lifeline. Emotional maturity says, I feel deeply, but I'm not easily moved. It says, I care, but I'm still centered. It says, you matter to me, but you don't own me. And when a woman walks in that truth, she becomes magnetic, not because she hides her emotions, but because she's mastered them. Never reveal all your financial struggles or successes too early. Money. It's one of the most powerful forces in our lives. And when it comes to relationships, it speaks louder than love sometimes. But sis, let's be clear. Money is spiritual too. It reveals character. It exposes motives. And if you're not careful, it can become the very thing that binds you to someone who was only meant to pass through, not partner with your purpose. One of the most dangerous things a woman can do, especially early on in a relationship, is to lay all her financial cards on the table. Whether it's the depth of her struggles or the height of her success, she must be strategic about what she reveals, when she reveals it, and why. Because not every man needs to know whether you're barely making rent or sitting on six figures. Both realities, if exposed too soon, can attract the wrong kind of energy. When you lead with your financial struggles, talking about your debts, your past mistakes, how hard it's been to recover, you can unintentionally position yourself as someone to rescue. And while it may feel like vulnerability, what it really does is shift the power dynamic. Some men, especially those looking for control, will step into that space, not to support, but to dominate. They use your struggle as leverage, making you feel like you owe them something just for standing beside you during your storm. That's not partnership. That's manipulation dressed up as protection. On the flip side, when you expose your financial success too early, your income, your investments, your savings, your business growth, you might attract someone who's more interested in your lifestyle than your heart. Let's be honest. Not every man is built to handle a financially empowered woman. Some will see your success as a threat, and others will see it as an opportunity. Both are dangerous. One tries to diminish you, the other tries to use you. And I know what you're thinking, but shouldn't he know who I really am? Yes. But real revelation comes in stages. Wisdom is in the timing. You don't reveal kingdom wealth to someone who's still living with a pauper's mindset. You don't share your financial struggles with someone who hasn't even proven emotional maturity. You don't hand someone access to your abundance or your lack when they haven't even earned your trust. See, money is more than just numbers. It's tied to your habits, your history, your healing. For some women, financial instability is rooted in childhood trauma, generational patterns, or poor decision making during a broken season. For others, financial strength is the result of sacrifice, discipline, and years of building from the ground up. Either way, that story is sacred, and it shouldn't be shared with someone just because there's chemistry or potential. You don't need to prove your worth or your struggle to be loved. Real love doesn't need your bank statement to show up. Real love watches how you carry yourself in lack and in abundance. Real love asks, how can we grow together? Not what can I take from her or what can she do for me? You also have to examine your own motives. Sometimes we overshare financially because we want validation. We want to impress. We want to be understood. But validation is a cheap substitute for wisdom. And when you feel the urge to prove your independence or explain your instability, pause and ask yourself, what do I actually need in this moment? Support or security? Because support comes from within. Security comes from God. A man should never be the source of either. He should be the bonus, not the foundation. So hold your financial truth with discernment. Share it in pieces, not paragraphs. Observe how he talks about money, his values, his stewardship, his ambition. Does he honor hard work? Does he envy success? Does he respect boundaries? Because how he handles his finances will tell you a lot about how he'll handle yours. And sis, if you're still building, that's okay. If you've already built it, that's beautiful. But don't ever feel the need to shrink or shout about it just to be seen. The right man will honor your hustle, respect your silence, and never ask for receipts to believe in your worth. Never reveal every detail of your past mistakes. There's a time and place for testimony, but sis, not every table is worthy of your truth. As women, we are often taught that honesty means exposure, that if we want to be truly loved, we must unveil every chapter of our past, especially the messy ones, the heartbreaks, the wrong turns, the shame, the sins, the secrets. But let me tell you something right now. Your healing is not a public spectacle, and your past is not required reading for a man to respect your present. When you reveal every detail of your past mistakes to a man, especially too soon, you risk placing your crown into hands that may not know how to handle it. You may think you're being transparent, but sometimes what you're actually doing is handing over ammunition. A man who is not mature, not whole, not spiritually grounded, will not see your past as a testimony. He will see it as a threshold, a limit, a weakness, something to compare, to manipulate, or to control. Some will use your past against you, not overtly at first, but subtly, in arguments, in moments when insecurity creeps in those petty little remarks that sound like jokes but cut like daggers. And you'll find yourself stuck between proving you've changed and defending a woman you no longer are. That's not freedom. That's bondage with a smiling face. Your mistakes, your real, raw, painful mistakes are sacred. They were part of your becoming. They shaped your discernment, birthed your standards, sharpened your voice. But that doesn't mean they need to be dissected for someone else's comfort. You don't owe anyone an autopsy of your former self just to prove your growth. God already did the hard work. You don't need a man's permission to move forward from what you've already laid at the altar. See, some of us overshare because we want to show humility. We want to say, look, I've been through some things. I've made some bad decisions, but I've grown. And while there's power in that posture, wisdom teaches us that the right people will see your transformation without needing every gritty detail of what broke you. You don't need to open old wounds to show that you've healed. And hear me clearly, this is not about hiding. This is not about shame. This is about stewardship. You are not the same woman who accepted less, who gave too much, who didn't know her worth. That woman is a part of you, yes, but she is not the whole you. And if a man is truly walking in alignment with your purpose, he'll be more interested in the fruit of your life now than the roots of where you were planted back then. Ask yourself, why am I telling him this? Is it to build trust or to beg for acceptance? Is it to be seen or to be validated? Because if your past is still asking for approval, it's a sign that some healing still needs to happen, and that's okay. But don't put that healing in someone else's hands, especially not someone who hasn't proven they know how to handle delicate things. Some details are for God. Some are for your journal. Some are for your therapist, and some maybe are for a man who has shown consistency, grace, spiritual maturity, and a love that mirrors Christ. But even then, you are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say, I've made mistakes, but I walk in wisdom now. You are allowed to share what serves connection and withhold what invites condemnation. Because what matters more than the mistakes is the woman who rose from them, the woman who refused to stay stuck, the woman who learned, who evolved, who got back up. That woman deserves to be seen for her now, not constantly questioned about her then. Never reveal your insecurities before you understand them yourself. Insecurities, those quiet voices that whisper, you're not enough, when the world sees strength. Those deep-rooted doubts that hide behind your polished smile, your degrees, your hustle, and even your worship. Every woman has them, but not every woman has mastered them. And here's the truth, sis. Revealing your insecurities to a man before you've taken the time to understand, process, and begin to heal them yourself is a dangerous kind of vulnerability. Because what you haven't confronted in private will control you in public. There's a difference between being open and being exposed. When you reveal an insecurity you haven't yet worked through, you're not just sharing a soft spot, you're offering an open wound. A wound that still bleeds when touched. A wound that hasn't yet developed the strength to handle misunderstanding, rejection, or even gentle truth. And not every man is equipped or anointed to touch what God hasn't finished healing. Sometimes we think that naming our insecurities will make them less powerful. But if you hand them over too soon, they can actually become more powerful, especially in the wrong hands. A man who hasn't been trained by God to steward your heart might turn those insecurities into leverage. He might start shaping his words to your wounds, not to comfort, but to control, not to love, but to keep you small enough to feel like you need him to feel worthy. That's why you must take the time to understand your insecurities, where they came from, what triggers them, and how they've impacted your relationships. Do they stem from abandonment, comparison, rejection, childhood wounds, trauma dressed in survival? Until you understand the why, you risk placing the weight of your healing on a man who was never called to carry it. Sis, a relationship should not be the place where you discover your insecurities. It should be the place where you practice what you've already begun to overcome. A safe relationship can support your healing journey, but it should never be the healing. That's your work. It's your altar. It's your prayer closet, your therapy sessions, your journaling, your alone with God moments. When you know your insecurities, you can name them without becoming them. You can say, I'm still growing in this area, instead of, this is just who I am. You can own your story without letting it shrink you. And when you're confident in that process, you no longer need to over-explain, over-apologize, or over-perform in the presence of a man. Because your identity is not wrapped in whether he affirms your worth. It's anchored in the fact that God already did. The danger of exposing insecurities too early is that it creates a blueprint for someone to shape your self-worth. You start leaning on their validation. You start second-guessing your strength. And before you know it, you're looking to them to fix things only God can fix. That's how emotional dependency is born. That's how cycles of people pleasing and anxiety take root. That's how you lose yourself in the pursuit of being enough for someone else. But when you understand your insecurities, you can speak from wisdom, not from wounds. You can say, this is an area I've struggled with, but I'm doing the work. You're not asking to be rescued. You're inviting someone to walk beside you while you keep building. That's power. That's maturity. That's alignment. So guard your self-awareness like it's treasure, because it is. Don't hand your self-image to someone still figuring out how to love themselves. Don't bleed emotionally in places that haven't proven they can hold space for your healing. And most of all, don't confuse premature vulnerability with intimacy. Intimacy comes with trust. Trust is built over time, and time is the only real test of whether someone is safe enough to see what's beneath your armor and still honor your crown. Never reveal your long-term expectations before a man reveals his intentions. A woman's heart is prophetic. You can see things in a man before he sees them in himself. You can envision a future, build a home in your mind, raise babies in your prayers, and plan a legacy before he's even decided what he wants for dinner next week. And there's nothing wrong with dreaming. You were made to dream. But sis, there is a sacred difference between dreaming and depositing those dreams into someone who hasn't even told you if he's staying. When you reveal your long-term expectations, marriage, family, spiritual partnership, financial goals, before a man has clearly communicated his intentions, you start laying down bricks on a foundation that hasn't been poured. You start aligning your life with a vision he may never step into. And here's the hard truth. Some men will ride that wave. They'll sit back and let you do the emotional, spiritual, and relational labor while they just enjoy the benefit. Not because they're evil, but because you offered more than they were ready or willing to commit to. And now you're disappointed, you're resentful, you're confused, because in your mind you had something sacred, but what you had was a hope, not a partnership. What you had was potential, but he never promised to grow with you. And that gap between your expectations and his intentions becomes a place of pain. You cannot build forever with someone who's still entertaining temporary. You cannot offer legacy talk to a man who hasn't even confirmed he's dating you with purpose. When you start revealing long-term expectations without knowing where he truly stands, you risk compromising your standards to keep the illusion of progress. You begin justifying emotional investment that hasn't been reciprocated. And you may even begin to perform, acting like a wife to prove you're worth the title, when he's never even mentioned commitment. A woman of wisdom doesn't just speak her dreams, she guards them. She doesn't throw her pearls before someone who hasn't even shown he's capable of recognizing their value. And this is especially important for my kingdom women, because your vision is not small, your calling is not casual. You're not just trying to get married, you're trying to partner in purpose. That means who you choose matters deeply. That means you don't just need a man who looks good, sounds good, and makes you laugh. You need a man who's been sent. Let his intentions speak first. Let his consistency speak first. Let his character, his discipline, his pursuit speak first. Don't hand over the blueprint for your heart and expect him to build when he hasn't even picked up the hammer. Don't rush to shape your life around someone who hasn't even revealed the shape of his. And if he asks you where you stand, yes, speak your truth, but speak it with clarity and calm, not desperation, not pressure, not performance. A secure woman can say, I value marriage, I desire legacy. I'm not dating casually, and still leave room for discernment. Because expressing a value is different from placing an expectation on someone who hasn't earned that space in your life. Discernment is key, because sometimes the right man will need time, but a man who's serious will never leave you confused. His words will match his actions. His effort will reflect his interest. And he'll ask the right questions because he's not afraid of your vision. He wants to be part of it. So until then, Keep your expectations sacred. Keep them in your prayers. Keep them in your journal. Speak them into the atmosphere with God, not desperation. Let a man reveal himself before you reveal what your whole future looks like. Because once he shows you who he is and you see he's aligned, you won't have to force anything. You won't have to over-explain, over-give, or overextend. You'll simply walk into a partnership where your vision is matched, your purpose is respected, and your heart is safe